of the last sonata by Beethoven needs to be played dramatic, forceful, overdotted, but not grace notish, upbeat with a leap of incredibly chromatic interval, but it's not with the pedal harmonized, so you can hear the leap, and mostly manage the weight amount on the keyboard. Since one starts with such a blasting opening effect, and Beethoven loved those, that catches your attention, it takes your breath, but the pianist has to be careful to never push heavier, deeper than they can take in amount of weight from the wrist to the forearm. In order to do that, you have to be always aware. And that is something that is very difficult to do without the experience of the concert, that with a heightened energy and perhaps even more of this inner drive that comes from performing in front of an audience, where one way or the other, through the work, of course, for the meaningful fact of the piece, you want to seduce the audience, not a seduction in terms of superficial charm, of even passion, but really Beethoven's music has a message, a statement. It's a purposeful performance, and because the opening is so drastically, unexpectedly dramatic, the weight has to be always not more than you can take for the palm support, and therefore without stiffness in the wrist to support it, almost like a suspension on a car. Regardless the instrument, the acoustic, and of course the stage of mind of oneself when we perform it, because yes, we're in heightened alert of all of our energies. I guess that's what it is, wisdom, not so much control, but bring forward the horizon line direction pointing at. So you don't play the note that you present, you play the note that you are going to present. You go this to go there and to reach here. So it's not about the note you play, it's about the notes towards which you go. And in the driven phrase, direction, line, aim, you find the energy not so much in the weight and the power of each note, but in the leap. It's difficult to manage because in one way or the other, we play the keyboard, and in the opening, E flat, F sharp are two black keys. So it's harder to miss because they're above the white keys, but when you do one of the two is white, and then you reach between the neighboring ones that you want to avoid. So the tip of the fingers have to be straight, the wrist has to be flexible, but the real performance of the note happens from the knuckle of the thumb and the fifth finger. So that you don't need the forearm tension or any tendon tension, let less wrist, but the support of the palm, which has this possibility to sustain the leap but also the landing. And in order to avoid banging, you want to touch before you play, so shift earlier, faster than the time it takes you to play the next note, so you don't play upon landing, but you anticipate. As if you had two hands, but then it's not having the same gestural effect. In the intent, yes. In the notation, perhaps Beethoven didn't care so much how it will be played. Of course, it's safer, if I may say so, to play But does it take away the gestural dramatic effect? Chopin, years later, would write his B-flat minor sonata with the same dramatic opening. Must have studied 111, the Frédéric. And in the notation, if we really play the 32nd, 1 2 3 4 2 2 3 4 4 2 3 4 4 2 3 4 2 2 3 4 3 2 3 4 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 3 2 3 4 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 3 4 2 So inevitably you're not a conductor when you're a pianist, because you play. Whenever the conductor definitely doesn't play. The conductor anticipates, conducts beats, organizes, prepares, anticipates on the lifting to play together with a large group, a single rhythmic figure of a 30-second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. And if you take it in the tempo, you can think, okay, the 30-second sounds a bit wide for a dramatic opening. It's more spicier if you overdot the rhythm. Then you get this grace notishness instead of when the 30-second has its own articulation, its own personality. Yata! Is the interpreter an extra composer? Tricky question, because overall, during the performance, the interpreter brings the music back alive from the dead page. The first theme that follows this introduction is very 4/4 rhythmical. This kind of first theme on the downbeat, starting on the tonic, and then going to the dissonant interval that we had in the beginning, but on the way up, instead of we have diminished seventh. We are here confronted to the fact that the music carries its own drive. So we don't have to play prettyful, we have to play meaningful. And in the rhetoric of the oral persuasion of the great oratorians, theater, great conquestors, the charisma of the repeated note or the repeated word takes its place so dramatically. One can wonder, what would have been if Beethoven wrote, it didn't repeat immediately, and then we produce on the pattern on a scale a step above, and again, and then shorter. There's a struggle, a drive, a shortness of breath, and shorter bow strikes. There is a dramatic rising as well as a stretto of the patterns from 8 to 4/16 notes, with accents on the upper beats. So this cell repetitivity of the pattern, is it a repeat? It's not a repeat. Is it an insistence? It is. Can we do without it? Of course we can't. It's in the DNA of the thought process of the expression of this first theme, which is such assessment, such a it gives its statement, the famous Es muss sein, Beethoven's motto, according to what I read. It must be, it has to be, it will be. It's a willpower of the human over nature and destiny. So would it be repeats or with a sign for a section or inside the pattern? I think we need to play it with that continuous insistence, as if it is developed, not repeated, because it's not repeated. Nobody can do anything alike. It's fake symmetry. In fact, it's an insistence on repeating a word, but with different tones. I want, I will, we must, we shall win, or something. There is something very striking in this sonata. The second theme. You know, the truth be said, normally the second theme should be really contrasting. Here it's dotted rhythm, less contrasting. But what is very striking in Beethoven's writing is that the first theme is full of octaved patterns. The two hands playing in unison, an octave apart, obviously. Not even the same octave. And the second theme appearing all alone. So incredibly powerfully vulnerable, and not octaves. Except at the very end, where he, at the moment of the resolution of this syncopated tension on this word sound on the second beat, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then he octaves. And not before. I think all this is very important in interpretation. Naturally, everything is important, but the point is that some things that can appear details are in fact decisive for the direction of the line, which means for the storytelling, conviction, perception, a sense of truth. And I'm developed, well, perhaps I mean, doubt is healthy, but this one I don't doubt. The descending melodic line of the second theme should be heard all the way down, even when octaved here. I have no proof, obviously, because the composer died. And the indication on the score doesn't say which one should be voiced. Is it... or... And the interpretation is choice making. I still think that in an orchestration you could have, by the choosing of the given instrument, let's say if it was a clarinet and a flute, you'll hear more the clarinet than the flute, depending of the dynamic range, but also because of the range itself. So there is a natural hierarchy of instruments appearing in the foreground and the background in an orchestration, but in the piano playing, you have to willingly choose. And if you don't, it appears like you only hear what happens and distracts you from the flow of the started melody. Rather, but you already heard that C in the highest. And why again? Of course, why not? he's allowed to want to go back up at the very moment he's dropping. Or did he just put a halo resonance on the top with the melodic line being brought out for the flow and the follow-up of the thematic material? Regardless, I hate myself when I try to find analytical explanations to my intuitive musical drive. After all, it doesn't need to be justified and explained, just played. And that's it. Of course, stated through the playing, shaped through the voicing, sculpted through the phrasing, chiseled through the articulation. You feel like you make a statement that has some meaning with the next statement, which is immediately a restatement with more decorations and this kind of looser quintuplet. And then who am I, nobody? Who is he, everything? Did he mention which one he wants? No. Perhaps it was a non-question for him, because in a way people played music of the time in their time, and that was new piece. I find that pianistically, as much as the opening shouldn't be overused with power in order to keep the precision of the shifting as well as the quality of the sound. No bang, but deep inside the keys, and then provide a resonance that gives a blossoming length of sound, and not a just dropping, which gives a smashing feeling of basically a smack, what it is. And the pedal helps to mellow the attack, which is so percussive. After all, that's what the hammer instrument is for. And in the opposite, the single voice dropping is on the syncopated upbeat, such an unbelievably on the dominant of the relative major. Well, it's not relative major, it's on the 6th degree. But anyway, regardless, the point is it's in major, and it gives a sort of a hope, but it's suspended alone in the air. It helps to do substitutions. 4, 2 into 4, 2, 3 into 4, and then 2, 3 into 4, and then into 2. I believe in substitutions. I think they bring the finger pedal legato connection, even if it's not over legato per se, but the speaking legato, the portato, perhaps the parlando, the spoken, as if each syllable is pa, pa, ta, ta, ta. You play with this, you project, like tongued for the wind instruments, the consonant before the vowel. And since Beethoven uses so orchestrally effectively the ranges on the fortepiano of the time, with a straight strung instrument, you heard really different color, like woodwinds, and compared to strings if it was double bass and flute. If you think out of the box, you will say, thankfully he didn't do. Or that's the way to really appreciate how he did. And then take into account the decay of the held E flat, to play the following C at the level of its drop, and then use the repeated note of the anticipation to the appoggiatura in order to rebuild an energy in dynamic. Not much, but to be back to a mezzo something and then drop back. So you can have an expressive curve in terms of the phrasing, arching, as if you have a vibrato. I often wonder, as a teacher for so many decades, okay, how would have he wanted to hear it? Am I misreading in it? Am I misguessing in it? In his innuendos, in his intent, compared to the notation or the publisher? Perhaps ultimately it's a vain question, because it's now, it's no more then. And his text is with us, not his, let's say, living connection of the notes. And why does it mean to us, perhaps differently, if not perhaps even more? Because we have more time, perhaps, to work on it, to study it, to learn it, to perform it, to record it, to think about it, to organize it, to analyze it, to teach it, and therefore, by revisiting it, it becomes part of our life, as if we, in a way, if it's not written it becomes part of our intimate musical world. I believe very much in this suspension and with the substitution. And this replaying of the repeated note inside the keys, not lifting the finger, because it changes the character to something frivolous when the insistence of the repeated note, which is an appoggiatura, anticipation, dotted anticipation to the appoggiatura. If that's not intense, what is it? Leaning is appoggiare. And the beauty of it is, because it's playing alone without any left hand harmonizing, the appoggiaturas don't create a tension release of a dissonance consonance, because there is nothing to play against in the bass. And then scarce harmonization. And I wonder if, probably, in the life of a performer, many did before me, many will do after me. Many taught it before me, many will teach it after me. Many will wonder, what did he want to mean, say, how much, to which extent, and all found some kind of perhaps answer, if not a continuous question, deepening, purposeful meaning. I don't know, but I find that perhaps we spend more time thinking his music than he took time writing his own, even if he did a lot of rewriting in terms of scratches and restarting. There is such a beautiful essence of humanity in him, that struggle to extract the essence of what is musically in him, and therefore giving it to us, and we receive it already all made. There's another mystery in the end of the first movement of this movement, which starts so bombastically drastic and which finishes as over dramatically, perhaps at the get-go, anticlimatically with a plagal cadence, documented, if I may say documented, ornamented, decorated with very light passing tones in the low register where it's usually heavy would have been. But it's here. The A minor rounded by Mozart has also that. It's rare, though, to have the harmonization in the right hand and this flowing, fleeing. And because it's a subdominant to tonic, half minor, major, plagal cadence, it's away from all the tension of the leading tone, of the tritone, of the leading tone and tritone with the dominant. But so it's overly driven, overly dramatic, overly tense as it opens, surprisingly. It surprises you at the end of the first movement with the fact that it's a postscriptum type letter where all of a sudden there's something unrelated to what we heard until now that concludes it in C major. Of course, it's a bridge analytically to the second movement, which is in C major versus the first in C minor. But is it only because of that? Is it only because he wanted to bridge a connection, an announcement of this Picardy third for the serene and playful and spiritually uplifted in jubilation arietta? I mean arioso? I mean second movement or only other movement? I don't know. To tell you the truth, I really don't know. Something I don't think should be there is ritenuto and pedal. I think it could be diminuendo, but in tempo with articulation in the left hand and connected but not over legato top. As if you're detached from emotion. No ritenuto because it gives a false emphasis if you want, as if we want to make it more conclusively ending than he chose to not do it conclusively ending, and God forbids he knew how to do that. No, it's not that what he wanted. Not only because of the second movement, perhaps in part. The C minor concerto for keyboard or piano, for the piano, whatever you want to call it, by Mozart, first movement, after the cadenza. And in the Mozart's already, you hear what you'll hear in Beethoven's third, the again C minor key concerto, when he goes. Picking up the emphatic, typical Beethovenian C minor. But he did attend the premiere of Mozart's C minor concerto in the gazebo in Vienna on a Sunday afternoon. He stood up supposedly and said, I didn't come to hear Mozart practice his scales. And Mozart is the first one in the concerto that ends with a solo part reconnecting with the orchestra after the cadenza in the coda in the first movement, this section, which Mozart did 20 years before Beethoven wrote his. Another 25 years and he writes this. Probably the reason people tend to think that the late Beethoven sonatas have to be played in maturity is that maturity involves, in fact, like everything, aging involves accepting something that you don't want to do. And to finish this sonata's movement with this anticlimactic ending, it's a lot to take if you really are fully invested in the juicy meaning of that first movement. Come on. And when you're young, and you have to be idealist in the sense that it's all or nothing, you have to be fully invested, and to have an ending that is so detached from the drama, detached from the emotion, as if it's very difficult, in fact, to play neutral when you have all your artistic juices. And when you start like this, right? To finish. To do a concession is something that wisdom brings you to. No, perhaps that's not the only purpose of playing Beethoven late sonatas when one has a little bit more of an experience of life with dealing with these emotions and these setbacks. Perhaps it translates better in the storytelling of the piece. It's not intuitively going through. There's a lot of anticlimactic elements, or sforzandi on the upbeats or the weak beats. All kinds of things that are indentations in the pure juice of the language storytelling. It's both incredibly enticing and incredibly controlling. It's not contradictory. It's almost more difficult to teach than to play in a way, because you have to put words on things that only the music itself expresses itself. At those levels of subtle psychological tune-ups. Oh my God. You cannot put pedal, because then all these passing tones become ice cream soup. Melted. This kind of very whispered articulation. And these sunsetting trumpets with a minor fourth degree and major first. There's always this ambiguity that the plagal cadence leaves. It's not that strong statement compared to the defeated, wounded hero style heroism. Perhaps I read too much into it. I often do. What a beautiful gift to transmit what we received to the next generation. Oh, I don't pretend to know. And it doesn't matter. It's not about me. It's about them. It's about him, Ludwig, and them, the students. I'm a hyphen. Oh yes, I react to this, I react to that, I imagine how it should have, could have. didn't, and why it's even more meaningful the way it is, and what makes it even so special. Or perhaps it doesn't have to be told, just played. And if you don't play it enough, then does it mean you don't feel it enough? No. Culture, analytical, stylistic understanding, context, orchestration, imagination, who knows what, colors, tastes, all kinds of analogies work. And perhaps ultimately himself, when he composed, if asked, he might have not been able to tell us what exactly inspired him to write this type of harmonic colorization, this type of melodic interval striking interaction, the diminished seven, the diminished fourth in his first theme. Though I would have liked to know. Not that I need to know, after all, that stays in the secret of the creation. I like to think that the audacity of 1820s, the Viennese times, still means so much, not only to us, but it questions us to the core of our musicianship. Not what it is, but how much of it should I hold back or give or hold or fully extend that sense of elevation, the sense of you're pulled up by the inspiration heights of the composer's melodic, harmonic, whatever, perhaps even simply motivic elements. And Beethoven knows how to do so much uplifting out of very mundane intervals. Taken alone, it's like banal chords, but the way Beethoven treats them rhythmically and the way he tosses them into the into the air, it gives us a sense of, it makes us feel like we are somehow breathing a higher air of energy that is positive, some kind of at least that's what I feel. Perhaps not everybody does, and after all, everybody is free to feel what they do. I don't want to assume that is, but that's what is for me. Is kind of a sense of generous sharing of an idealized version of things, people, society, events, destiny, whatever you want to call it. Timeless, despite the passing time. Thank you.